We didn't ask Amazon to sponsor us. It was just the best product. We believed in the product and suited what we were trying to do. So we installed it and we marketed it. And of course, guess who's seen it? Ring and Amazon. So now, who are we now working with? Amazon. Now, of course, what I'm talking about here is just using the brand in your life and therefore it being a natural fit for the brand to work with you. When I wear Whoop out on the street, it's natural I'm wearing it because I like the product. And then Whoop will see me with millions of views on my videos wearing a Whoop and they will contact me. So I think that just leaning in to a brand relationship and not initially thinking about the money, back to some of the points I was making in some of the other areas earlier, delayed gratification in sponsorship can also be very powerful. Just work with brands that you love will always be easier than forcing a brand into your ecosystem, but also just doing stuff with that brand as part of your day-to-day business life can lead to sponsorship. How to build a brand. Now, this subject is complex and exciting. If you get it right, a lot of the things I've talked about earlier, like sales and marketing, will happen naturally, but it is complex. Now, there's lots of videos out there about what is a brand, so I'm not going to bore you with that. It's obvious. It's ultimately a statement about what you are doing. You want people to look at it and know. I love the images. I've seen many. You can take away the logo, you can take away everything, and you still know it's that brand. It's not about the actual logo, the design. Branding is about the purpose of the business, the essence of what you're doing. Nike is about supporting athletes. Apple is about supporting creativity. Ultimately, when you're coming to figure out your own brand, I would start with your personal brand because it's a really good way of figuring out how to build a brand. Why? You know you, right? If you're honest about yourself, you can make a brand persona. And you start with writing down your values. What do you care about? What are your non-negotiables? What will you say no to? What will you say yes to? Understanding your personality, understanding what it is you want to do, that's what your brand is about. That's who you are. Now, you will already have a personal brand, and anyone that doesn't want a personal brand, I'm sorry, you're gonna have one no matter what. People will talk about you when you're not in the room. You need to embrace personal branding. And by understanding how others perceive you, it can literally change the trajectory of your life. Now, I have some real gripes with personal brand, and it's not very scalable. Only in certain exceptions around people like Kardashians and so on, can you actually scale a personal brand. As someone that's built a personal brand, as someone that's got 4 million followers, that spent 4 years building a personal brand here in the UK, I can tell you it is sometimes a pain in the arse. I am responsible now, no matter what, to do videos like this and post up stuff even when I'm tired. Like now, I'm actually tired and I still have to do this video because if I don't do it, you probably won't take it seriously. I could give this knowledge to my colleague and give it to you and you probably wouldn't listen. So you need to hear it from someone that's been there and done it, like me. And I understand that. And I actually do love doing these videos and helping you. But I'm just trying to highlight the personal brand side is dangerous if that's all you build. You have to take personal brand seriously. You have to identify what your personal brand is. And by the way, I know people that have made their personal brand not being on social media. Their personal brand is they don't get back to you in email. That's actually sometimes what makes them unique. That's their personal brand. I don't reply to DMs. I want to make videos like this that bring you value. I want to do lives. That means I interact in the real world with real people. I have my rules, I have my values. I'm dyslexic, so I don't like reading DMs, but having those rules and having that discipline will ultimately help you define what people say about you instead of people saying it without you having defined it. But brand values of your own can teach you how you need to do exactly the same for your company name. So let's take my brand, Help Bank. Right, Help Bank has a lot of the traits that I personally value. Honesty, openness, authenticity, value. These are all words in my personal brand persona that I have translated into my company persona. However, Help Bank's long-term future also involves helping people with finance. Finance is not a word I use on my personal brand, and also supporting people to get the funding they need is something I have personally done many, many times, but as an organization, as a platform, it's going to be a much more serious thing for Helpbank. So when the branding was designed, we said it has to look a little bit more serious than the Simon Squibb brand, because ultimately we'll be funding people's dreams at scale, and people need to trust if we tell them we're going to fund their dreams, it's actually going to happen. So the Helpbank branding is a combination of the Simon Squibb branding and our competitors potentially in the future. We want to make it look serious. It has some element of fun, but ultimately it has its own brand persona. And all you need to do initially to get the brand right is write down all the different brand values. Now, I want to teach you about how companies apply brand at scale. And there's a few different ways it generally plays out. So let's take a brand like Canon. Canon run a brand method which we call reference, right? And reference is when they leverage someone else's brand to make their brand look good. So Canon, for example, worked with a photographer called Peter McKinnon, who is a brilliant photographer. I'm a big fan of his. And by sponsoring him, by supporting him, they don't need that person as a CEO in their company like Apple have done. They have it external. Nike also do this. I mentioned it earlier. Nike will sponsor top performing athletes with nice personalities that have values, and that therefore becomes part of the Nike brand. So they use this reference model to make their own brand look good. Now, Apple, as I mentioned earlier, they use a different method. I call this the leadership method. And the leadership method is basically where you have a person in the company that represents the brand values. Now, in Helpbank, I am that person. Probably in your business, you are, if you're a small business owner, the person that is the leadership value brand ambassador for your company. You're probably the one that asked to go on stage and talk about your business. You're the one in sales meetings. Whatever your business model is, you're probably the one representing the brand. Of course, your staff will represent the brand. Your office environment will represent the brand. Like I said earlier, the days when you go out, have a party and post on your social media will represent your brand. But when it comes to making your brand values clear, you do it by these two methods. You either have a reference model, which means you sponsor certain people that represent your brand value, or you have a leadership model, which is you personally in the company leading the charge to make sure people understand your brand. And I think when it comes to brand building, there are some risks in both of these models. Now, in the reference model, if a celebrity that's supporting your brand does something bad, that can affect your brand. Now, this happens a lot, and they often get fired quick. I think one of the most famous cases, Kanye West, who of course got dropped by Adidas, and then lawsuits galore. But what I'm saying is, though, what's good about the reference model is you don't have to spend 4 years building up social media presence like me. I've spent every single day for 4 years doing a post, building up a community. You can just leverage all of that hard work, and your brand can have the halo effect of working with me. But the downside is, what if I do something bad? Then your brand is at risk. So you need to have mechanisms in place to make sure you're protected as a brand, but that's how you scale brand. And of course, the leadership model also has its weaknesses. We all saw this a little bit with Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs left Apple, Apple had a real problem for a long time. They put so much of their brand value in the Steve Jobs brand that when he left, the magic left, was often what people said, right? So you have to make sure that you as a leader, it's sustainable for you to be that leader and lead that brand effort, and or there's a good transition model in place. And again, when Steve Jobs went back to Apple, he did have a strong transition model with Tim Cook. Now, Tim Cook's an interesting one because he's not Steve Jobs, of course, but he is Mr. Data. He's someone you trust with your data, right? They've picked him in part because he looks trustworthy. He talks in a very trustworthy and transparent way. And in Apple's process of building a brand, today that is more important to them than a maverick leader telling you about a brilliant product. In fact, the Apple iPhone hasn't changed much since Steve Jobs died. But the point I'm trying to make here is, if you want a brand to be successful, you've got to pick one of these two strategies. Now, you can do both, of course, but you probably double the risk of having some problem in your business. And whichever path you choose, make sure you think it through right to the end. Have the ability to cut that influencer out of your business if anything goes wrong. And equally, if you're running the leadership model, make sure that that leader has a transition plan, because at some point we're all going to die. Now, hopefully we're all going to live forever with Elon Musk's help. I'm sure that's true. But I will tell you now, The final thing, really important in brand, learn to say no. If you don't say no to the wrong relationships, the wrong brand partnerships, the wrong clients, your brand will get damaged. I have had this experience myself. I spent 10 years building up a brand. It had a fantastic reputation, and then I got a bad client that didn't understand how the world worked and made my brand shit with their big mouth and their lies. And this can be hugely damaging.